Welcome back to another BGCSE Biology paper review. We're reviewing 2018 paper 2. Now remember, before you start this examination, you should always write a school number, always write your candidate number and your surname and also your initials. Also remember to follow all the instructions given. Also read through the instructions on this paper. All right, so let's go to our first question here. This one says the diagram below shows some specialized cells, diagrams not drawn to scale. All right, so first here we have A, which is a sperm cell, B is a plant cell, C, it is a red blood cell, D, a neuron, and E, an epithelial cell. All right, so here it asks us now to identify the cell which has, and please remember, they say identify the cell. They did not say name the cells. However, I'm going to put the names as well. So here it said has chloroplast, and so that will be our cell B. So let's put B right here. And this is a plant cell. Again, they ask us to identify, not to name. All right, so I must put in there for convenience purpose. And for when you're studying, at least you have the information. Cilia. And the one that has cilia, it is cell E. Okay, so notice those ear-like structures on it. So these are the cilia here. All right, so the hair-like structures. Let me just highlight that for you real quick. So those are the cilia. All right, so let's go to identify this as our next cell. So this is cell E. And this type of cell here, it is an epithelial cell. Epithelial cell. All right. No nucleus, and that's a red blood cell. So let's go up there quickly, and that is cell C. So cell C, it is the red blood cell. All right, and an axon is a neuron, that is cell D. So as an axon, it is cell D, and it is a neuron. Let me just put it here. All right. And that is a neuron, and specifically, it is a motor neuron. So I must put motor neuron. And how will we know this is a motor neuron? Please remember, the reason why we say this is a motor neuron is because the cell body is at the end of the neuron, right? So remember, motor neuron, cell body is at the end. Sensory, it will be at the side, okay? Sensory side. All right, so let's move on to the other part of the question here. And this one says, state the function of cell A and cell C and explain one adaptation that helps each cell to carry out this function. And so we're looking at cell A and C. So cell A, which is the sperm cell, and cell C, it is the red blood cell. All right, so again, for cell A, which is the sperm cell, so the function of a sperm cell is to fertilize. So to fertilize the egg or the ovum. So fertilize the ovum. Let's put egg in bracket. All right, so therefore the function here, it is a reproductive function, right? So it is a reproductive function. I must put reproductive right there. All right, so reproduction. So it's for reproduction, all right? And so what is adaptation here that allows the sperm to meet the egg? And is that the sperm cell has a tail. So it has a tail, to swim and meet the egg cell. So to swim and meet the egg cell or ovum in the fallopian tube. All right, so meet the fallopian tube. So that's it. It has a tail to swim and meet the egg in the fallopian tube. Now, cell C, it is the red blood cell. So the function for the red blood cell is to transport oxygen to the cells of the body. So this is to transport oxygen to the cells of the body. All right, great. Now, what is adaptation here that allow red blood cells to transport oxygen? And is that the red blood cell contains, so cell C contains hemoglobin. All right, so contains hemoglobin to which oxygen can be attached. Okay, can be attached. All right, so great. So the hemoglobin will allow oxygen to attach to it. And so they carry oxygen to the cells of the body. Cells will use this oxygen for respiration. Also, it will also take away carbon dioxide as well. All right, let's now name cell B. So cell B here, which is the plant cell. We're going to name that real quick. All right, so cell B, it is the plant cell. Let's leave that real quickly. This is the plant cell. It's a state specifically where in the plant this is found. And if you notice the type of plant cell here, let's just go back to it. It has a lot of chloroplast. All right, and so therefore it must be a photosynthetic cell. And so specifically where you do find this, you find it in the leaf of the plant itself, right? So in the leaf, that's where the most photosynthesis will take place. And particularly because of the shape as well, because it is elongate, we can say this can be found in the palisade, okay? Palisade mesophyll layer, okay? Palisade mesophyll layer. All right, so therefore, that's where you find that type of cell. Now, part 3 says state two differences shown on the diagram between cell B and cell E. So let's look at the diagram carefully for B and E. So B, all right, so cell B, you know that it is the plant cell, as we name right up here. All right, so let's go to that real quickly. All right, so now we're ready to go there, and now we are going to cell B. All right, so cell B is a plant cell, and cell E, it is the epithelial cell, what is the animal cell. So look at them carefully, see what the differences are. And so what I will advise you to do is to draw a line along your page like this. So you create a chart, and the chart will make it easier for you to write your differences. And so here we could put our cell B on this side, and over this side we put our cell E. All right, so if you look at the diagrams, you'll notice there are a number of things. So here, cell B, which is the plant cell, you have a cell wall. So one difference, you have a cell wall that has cell wall. All right, and so for this one, there'll be no cell wall. So here we have no cell wall. All right, let's go to another difference. Another difference here is that for the cell B, there is no cilia. It has no cilia. All right, while the cell E has cilia. All right. All right. And another difference we can talk about here, if you notice again, if you look at cell B, carefully see a lot of chloroplast. So here, this one has chloroplast. All right, so we have chloroplast present. And cell E, no chloroplast. They will access to two, but again, for studying purposes, you need to know as much as possible and know how to approach your questions really, and what to write as your answers. We can also put another one right here. I want to look at the diagram, what I'm going to say right here, right? Notice here, based on this diagram, notice the position of the nucleus. The nucleus is positioned at the side in structure B or in cell B, while it's centrally located in cell E. So we could put that as another difference as well. So we have 4 major differences between these two cells. So here we can say the nucleus is located at the side, and in this structure, structure E, which is the epithelial cell, the nucleus is centrally located. All right, so that will be your differences right there. All right, so again, is always look at the diagrams carefully if you do ask you to look at the diagram or use the diagram to show the differences. We know there are other differences as well, such as vacuole, because the vacuole in the plant cell, which is B, it is large and centrally located. While in the animal cells, you know that vacuoles will be small and more than one vacuole. All right. All right. So for number 2, it said the pictures show 4 images of organisms found in a Bahamian ecosystem. And so we have the periwinkle, we have the limpet. I'm very sorry that the diagrams are not so clear based on how I scanned them. We have the sea anemone, we have the chitin. Now the first part of the question now reads that define the term ecosystem. And so an ecosystem is an area, so I'm going to write it here. So an area where different communities of organisms interact with each other and the environment. And when we talk about interacting with the environment, we're talking about the biotic part of the environment, which is the living part of the environment, and also the abiotic part, which is the non-living part of the environment. All right, and so the next part of the question now reads that name the Bahamian ecosystem in which these organisms are found. And these organisms are specifically can be found on the rocky shore. So they are specifically on the rocky shore. And just to make a note here that the rocky shore is a part of the marine ecosystem as well. So I must put in there's a broader ecosystem. But the specific part we're talking about here is the rocky shore. Now, just to point out this, that the rocky shore is a very harsh environment. All right, and the organisms that live there will have to be adapted to the harsh environment, such as wave, also high temperature, salt conditions, and so on, low tides and high tides. Now, this part of the question now state, it said state one way in which this ecosystem is of economic importance to the Bahamas. And so one of them is that it serves as a nursery ground for organisms such as crustaceans. So such as crustacean. All right, so crustacean can be found there, such as the crabs and so on. It also produces food for a lot of organisms as well. It produces food. And the food that we're talking about here is like algae, for example. All right, so some on the rocks you'll find a lot of algae that are very important food sources for different marine organisms. Another possibility here is that it protects the land. All right, and the land is a very important part of the Bahamian ecosystem. And land is very important in terms of production and so on, all right, and for habitat. All right, so it protects the land. So it protects the land. For part B, It said organisms are adapted to survive specific factors. It's a complete the table below using only organisms shown above. And so the organisms shown above here, we have the periwinkle, the limpet, the sea anemone, chitin. And I'm very sorry that the pictures are not as clear as I want them to be. All right, so here now, the first column is about the name of the organism, and then the second is a factor, then the adaptation, then how the adaptation aids survival. And so in terms of wave action, pretty much any of these organisms can be placed here because of, say, the periwinkle, the limpet, and the chitin. They have hard shells. The sea anemone, it do not have a shell, but the body is soft. They're pretty much tentacles. And so they move in the direction of the wave as well. So if they were brittle, they will be broken easily, but they're soft and flexible. All right, so right here I'm going to put the periwinkle as an option. So the periwinkle is the option right there. And of course, you could put the chitin as well. You could put any of the organism there, but the adaptation is very important. So the adaptation here will be that this has a hard shell. All right, and of course, it prevents physical damage to soft bodies or the soft tissues. Now, in terms of mucus, the shell organisms tend to produce mucus around the opening of a shell, especially when they attach to the rocks. And so they keep the water in or the moisture in to prevent dehydration. So right now I'm going to put the chitin as the option right here. And how the mucus will protect them in terms of survival during especially low tides and high heat is that it prevents dehydration, okay? So the mucus will prevent dehydration. All right, now for part C. Now part C state that identify two organisms shown above which belong to the same phylum. If you watch a previous version, you'd realize that I've listed here as invertebrates, which they are invertebrates because they don't have backbone, but we're going to narrow it down and to make it more specific. And so here we have the periwinkle, the limpet, and the chitin. They're all mollusk, but the sea anemone belong to cnidarians. All right, so it is a cnidarian. So I'm going to put that there for you, just for you to know the category that this organism belongs to. So again, the sea anemone is a cnidarian. So let's put that right there. So it's a cnidarian. All right, but the others, they are mollusk, and that are, and those are specific phylum, but generally they are all invertebrates. All right, and so again, based on the previous version, you would have seen where I list the mollusk as the phylum. So now I'm going to put it in a specific version. And so two organisms here, again, that belong to the same group will be the periwinkle and the limpet. In fact, the chitin could also be placed there as well because all three are mollusk. And so the mollusk here would be the phylum. All right, and the reason for them to be in this group or category is because they have hard shell and also soft bodies. So they have soft bodies and hard shell. All right, and I'm putting the hard shell there because remember the sea anemone also have a soft body as well, right? So the hard shell and soft body will kind of separate them from the cnidarians. All right, so here I'm going to move on to the other question. Question number 3 said the graph shows the mass of Nassau grouper landed in the Bahamas from 1998 to 2007. Now, let me just point out something real quick right here. What this word landed means, okay? Landed means that it is referring to the amount that is being harvested from the sea and come onto the land, okay? So it's not, it doesn't mean imported, okay? It actually mean what you catch from the sea and bring to land itself. So if you're out there doing sport fishing and you catch and release, those are not counted, okay? those are not counted in what you catch and release. We're talking about what you actually brought on land to be sold or to be eaten. Okay. So here now, the range of years from 1998 until 2007 based on the graph. Your y-axis shows annual mass of grouper landing, and this is in kilograms. And here that each landing or amount of landing accounted for. So this is the data. All right, so now here it said now from the graph identify the year in which the most kilograms of grouper were landed. Here they're asking for the year, okay, but here they have kilograms, so this will be a typo right here. This is actually the least, so this is a typo as well. So let's ignore the typo right there. All right, so they ask you for the year, okay? And so the most landed here, look at the highest point. This is 18,000, and the here was 1998. The least, which is this, which is 4,000, and this is 2005. So let's put our 1998 for the most and our 2005 for the least. All right, so let's go down to that. Okay, right here. All right, so the most, again, as we look at the graph, that was 1998. Let's put our 1998 as our most, and here for the least is 2005. Now it asks us here to calculate the difference in the mass of Nassau grouper landed between the 2 years identified in A1 above. And so the 2 years that we're talking about here, again, 1998 and 2005. Here is 18,000 and here is 4,000. So the difference between those two, just put that in our answer. It's going to be 18,000 minus 4,000. All right, and that will give us our 14,000. All right, so 14,000 kilograms. All right, so now let's go to the next question. It says, suggest a reason for the difference indicated by your answer A1 above. So why is such a big difference? Even look at the graph. Why is it declining from such a large value to such a small value? 18,000 to 4,000. That's a big difference, isn't it? 14,000 difference. That's whopping. So what could cause this to happen here is that, yes, there could be a decline in Nassau grouper population. Yes, because of overfishing in previous years, isn't it? Right? So there could be a decline in the population of the Nassau grouper. Okay. All right. So that could be answer right there. What are the reasons do you think could be for this decrease or this drastic decrease as well? Now, the amount catch, it could be a limitation on the amount catch, isn't it? So it could be an introduction of closed season or a limitation in the amount catch. Okay, so it could be introduction of closed season. So maybe before 1998, there was no closed season. You just catch as much as you want. So introduction of closed season. Or it could also be limitation in the amount catch. Okay, let's put that there as well. Okay, limitation in the amount being caught. Okay, all right, so we could have that right there. All right, so those are possible answers. All right, but decline population is a great one. An introduction in of closed season, limitation in the amount being caught. All right. So let's go to the next question here now. Part B, it said in recent years, a closed season. So we kind of answer that question up there by saying a closed season, right? So in recent years, a closed season was introduced for Nassau grouper. A closed season is a period of time when you are not allowed to catch an organism. So now it asks, explain why a closed season is important. You're not allowed to catch. Why is it important for you not to catch any organism at this time? And this now, it gives the organism time or a chance. Give the organism a chance. I put a chance. Give the organism a chance to reproduce. Okay, so reproduce in order. Why are you reproducing in? Because it's a 2 mark. Let's put 2 things there. In order to maintain the population. In order to maintain Okay, maintain the population. Because if you do not do this, then you just catch right through the years. Then what may happen is that you catch more than what can be reproduced, and then eventually the organism may become extinct. So you want to do also is to say, okay, and this will prevent extinctions. You can add that as well. So maintain the population, preventing extinction. Okay. All right. So great. All right. There's a state under the regulation for fishing Nassau grouper. We kind of have that answer before when we put them there, because I could go back here and we said here we have a decline in population of Nassau grouper. That could be it, but the limitation could be a closed season or a limitation in amount being caught. But let's be specific in what is actually on the law book right now. It's a state under the regulation for fishing Nassau grouper, and one of them is by size or weight. So I'm put it here. There's actually weight really, but I'm put size, size/weight. Okay, and you cannot catch any more Nassau grouper less than 3 pounds. So you must have at least 3 pounds. The grouper must reach at least 3 pounds, right? And beside this, this will be at least 4 years old. So you're allowed to be at least 4 years old, because the reason for this, the Nassau grouper becomes sexually mature at age 4. Okay, approximately age 4. Okay, so at least 4 years old. Okay, 4 years. All right, so allow them to do it. I mean, you will not have a calendar to check how old the Nassau grouper is, but by looking at the relative size or the relative weight, you can say, okay, this is less than 3 pounds. This must be less than 4 years, right? This is, so you want to catch the largest possible grouper then. In other words, make sure that they at least get some chance to reproduce and maintain the population. All right. Another restriction here, I don't think this is a common one, but in terms of the amount being catch, so there's a limit on the amount being catch. And so you cannot have no more than 20 fish, which is approximately equal to 60 pounds. Okay, so you should not have no more than 20 fish or at least 60 pounds are allowed on the vessel. So 20 fish or 60 pounds are allowed, okay, are allowed per vessel, okay, per vessel. So you should not have any more than that on each vessel. So that's a great one. So you know, I mean, they can even tighten this as well. So you should not catch no more than that for a given week or a given month or so on. But that's what's on the book right now. No more than 20 fish or 60 pounds are allowed per vessel at all. All right, at any given one time, you should not have that. All right, so part C, it said name one other economically important marine species in the Bahamas and state the closed season for the named species. And so a quick one here is the crayfish. All right, so this is the crayfish. All right, and crayfish, lobster, spiny lobster, pretty much same type of organism. And so here now the closest is April 1st to July 31st, right? To July 31st. All right, so great. All right, so we have that, and now let's go to the next question, which is question number 4. In question number 4, now it said the graph shows how pH affects 3 different enzymes: enzyme X, enzyme Y, and enzyme Z. Now, if you notice the graph carefully, you have the activity on the Y and the pH levels on the X-axis. Now, if you notice these lines are showing you the pH when the activity is at the highest. So we call it the optimal reaction point or the optimal level, okay? Or the optimum pH. Now, it said, what are enzymes? And now enzymes, let me define that real quick for you. So enzymes are biological catalyst. All right, so they are biological catalyst. All right, that speed up chemical reactions in the body. All right, so that they speed up chemical reactions in the body without themselves being used up, right? But we can stop there, right? Really. So they are biological catalysts that speed up chemical reactions in the body without themselves being used up. All right, you could add that piece if you desire to do that. All right, so here now we said use the graph to help complete the missing information in the table below. First column asks talk about the enzymes XYZ, optimum pH. The optimum pH here they give us 2. Name of enzyme, place where enzyme found in the digestive system, nutrients enzyme act on. And so optimum pH here, let's go by rows. Okay, so let's do row 1 first, X. So enzyme X, optimum pH is 2. The name of it is pepsin. The place where enzyme found in the digestive system, and this is in the stomach. And in the stomach, pepsin will break down proteins. The optimum pH here for Y, so let's go to the graph, look for optimum pH for Y. The optimum pH for Y is 7. Notice that line goes down to 7, highest point of reaction. So the optimum pH, which would be the best pH for which it work at, right, it is 7. So this is 7. All right, this is amylase. Where is this enzyme found in the digestive system? Let's think about it, right? There are 2 types of enzymes in the body. You have the salivary amylase, I should say amylase, I say enzymes. There's a salivary amylase, and they are pancreatic amylase, right? And so the pancreatic amylase works in the small intestine. The small intestine is alkalinic, which means it must be a pH over 7. The salivary amylase works in the mouth, and the mouth is basically neutral, which is pH 7. So we can say that this is in the mouth and not in the small intestine, right? So notice the difference there. The nutrient the enzyme acts on, and so if it's in the mouth, the salivary amylase breaks down starch, which is a carbohydrate. Now Z is optimum pH of 12, and so this works in the small intestine, and it breaks down fat. So the enzyme that breaks down fat here is lipase, and lipase is also produced by the pancreas, as well as pancreatic amylase and also trypsin. Okay, so notice there are 3 enzymes produced by the pancreas. All right. Now here this part of the question says, from the table, identify which one of the enzymes work best in acidic conditions. And so if you look at the acidic conditions, there is pH below 7, and so that is enzyme X. Acidic condition will be enzyme X. Okay, and enzyme X based on the table is also called it pepsin, so it's pepsin as we know it. All right, and so it said what would be the effect on the activity of enzyme Y if placed in pH 10. Now let me kind of highlight something here for you. It said the effect on the activity. We're looking at the effect on the activity, and that's very important. The question is that asks us what is happening to the enzyme. It said what is the effect on the activity. So in other words, how will this enzyme react or behave if the pH is 10? So let's go to enzyme Y. Notice enzyme Y, it actually stops when it reaches a pH of almost 9, or say a pH of 9. So if it reaches 10, it's going to be even the same thing, right? Which means there's no reaction or no activity. So what they're looking for here, even though we know the reason behind this is that the enzyme will become denatured, that's not the answer, because we're looking at the effect on the activity. So the activity will slow down or will stop. Okay, so the activity will slow down. So the activity slows down or stop. Okay, so there'll be no reaction. There's be no chemical reaction by that enzyme at all. Okay. Now for part 4 here, now it said which other property of enzyme is shown by referring to the table in B1. And so look at the table carefully now. If you notice on this column, it talks about pH levels. So the second column talks about pH level. The only other thing that indicating any form of property here is the nutrient each enzyme is breaking down or reacting to. And so because each enzyme, right, react to something differently or acts on something differently, it therefore means the enzymes are substrate specific. Okay, so here is saying that enzymes are substrate, okay, specific. All right, so enzymes are substrate specific, which means they only react on certain nutrient or specific nutrients. Okay. All right, question number 5. We will finish soon. All right, so let's progress with this. So in this question, we said the diagram shows a synovial joint found in the human body. And so in this synovial joint here, we have a number of parts. We're going to label them afterwards. But let's see what's happening here. It's a name the type of synovial joint shown in the diagram. And based on the structure here, you can look at the type of bones as well and how they're located. And so this will be an hinge joint. Okay, so this is an hinge joint. Okay, hinge joint. All right. Great. All right, so it's a state of place in the body where this type of joint can be found. And we can notice that in the body we will see at the elbow. So we have it at the elbow. They only say one place though, so the elbow is fine. And we find this at the knee as well, eh? So we find hinge joint at the knee as well. Okay. For part B, it said name the part labeled A, B, C, and D. So let's look at A. A is a bone, B is the synovial fluid, C is a cartilage, and D is the ulna because we have the radius and ulna. We're going to be specific with this bone because we know this is, if this is radius and this is ulna, then this must be the arm, so this must be humerus. So let's put those in. Okay. So A is the humerus. Humerus. Okay, so A is the humerus. And B is the synovial fluid. Okay, synovial fluid. Right. All right, the synovial fluid right there. And then we have C, which is the cartilage. Okay. All right, so C is the cartilage. And D now is the ulna, as we said earlier. That's the ulna. So those are our structures there. And the radius here is a bone. So let's put that right in the bracket. It's a bone, specifically the humerus, based on where we'll notice is located. All right, so now it's to state the function of the parts labeled B and C. So B is the synovial fluid and C is the cartilage. So what is the function of a synovial fluid? Is to lubricate the joint, by reduce friction, right? So lubricate the joint, reducing friction. To allow the joint to move much easier and smoother. All right, and C now, which is the cartilage, it is a shock absorber. So it absorbs shock. Okay, so if a sudden hit or sudden jerk on your hand or anywhere you find cartilage, they can absorb a shock to prevent that sudden movement or injury to the ends of the bones. For part C1, it said place an X on the diagram to show the location of a tendon. And tendon is where muscle connect to bone. So I'm going to look at if any are shown here. And so yes, let's highlight the spot. So right here will be a tendon where the muscles connect to the bone. Here as well is another tendon here, muscle connecting to bone. All right, so we could label them as X. So X will be here. All right. So these structures are X, okay? All right, so that's where the muscle will connect to the bone, all right? Okay, so you see the labelings. All right, so now let's go to the other part of the question here. And I said, what is the function of a tendon? And a tendon, again, connects muscle to bone. So here is to connect muscle to bone, okay? To connect muscle to bone. All right, so that will be our Answer there? All right. So we can jump to our next question now, or another part of the question. Okay, this question continues. All right, so part D is it explain how the bicep muscle raises their radius. So if we look here carefully now, we're going to look at the muscle. Let's go back to it a little bit so I could demonstrate this. All right, for the radius to go up, right, then there must be a pull on this muscle. That means this muscle must go up as well. And so the reason why this muscle will go up is simply to cause a tension or a pulling force on the radius. And so it therefore means that this muscle must get shorter, which means it's going to be contract. So you're going to contract, all right? So let's answer this question. So what will happen here now is that the bicep will, let's put that in, the bicep, all right, the biceps muscle, let's put muscle, the bicep muscle will contract, all right, causing an upward pull on the radius. Okay, they cause an upward pull on the radius. Okay, great. Now the other part here said what term describes how the bicep and tricep muscle work in pairs to bring about raising and lowering the arm. And the bicep and tricep muscle, when one is contracting, the other one is relaxing. Okay, so they work oppositely to bring about the same action. And so because they're working oppositely to bring about the same action, this is called antagonistic. That's a word for it, okay? Antagonistic. Okay, so they work antagonistically to bring about that action. So they're antagonistic muscles. All right, so next question here, question number 6. All right, so question number 6 says, the diagrams represent the human respiratory system and a model of the human respiratory system. So diagram A is the system, diagram B is the model, okay? And so let's now go into it and see exactly what they're asking about this. It says, on the diagram, draw lines to the following structures and label them. So we're looking at the trachea, the larynx, the bronchus, and the diaphragm. All right, so let's label these now. So trachea. All right, matter of fact, let me draw my lines first to be easier for me when I finish. So my trachea will be there. Bronchus is the branch of the trachea, so that will be one of the branches. And then the larynx, which is right here, which is the voice box. And the other one is the diaphragm. So diaphragm is at the base right here. All right, so let's put our labels in now. And so here we have our larynx. Let's start from top here. So this is our larynx. And larynx, as I said, is a voice box. All right. We also have above the larynx, is called the pharynx. They didn't ask us for that, but I just want to put that in. So at least you know, if you're studying, you know exactly where this is. So the pharynx now, and the pharynx is the throat, okay? The pharynx is the throat. And now we have our trachea here. All right, and trachea contains rings of cartilage, and the rings of cartilage will help prevent the trachea from collapsing when you're swallowing food. All right, so that's the trachea. And the bronchus is one of the branches coming from the trachea. So this is the bronchus. All right. And then we have last structure down here is a diaphragm. Okay. DH. GM. All right. That's a diaphragm. All right. So now we have those structures labeled. Now the other part of the question here now said complete the table below to show the structures on the model in diagram B, on the model in diagram B represent. All right, so the balloon, and based on diagram B, what balloon represents in this thing is the lungs. So the balloons represent the lungs. The plastic bottle, which is the outermost part of it, which is with the rib cage that everything can be found in. And so this is the rib cage here. Okay, that's the rib cage. The rubber sheath, and the rubber sheath at the bottom here, that's the diaphragm at the bottom there, that would be the diaphragm. Okay, so let's put the diaphragm on the rubber sheet right here. So diaphragm. All right. And the straw represents the trachea. The straw is what will take the air down into the lungs. So that's the trachea. All right. And so we finish with this section. Let's go to the next section. It said, what would be the effect on the balloons of pulling down the rubber sheet? So if you pull on the rubber sheet right here, by pulling on it, it causes the air to move down into the balloon. So the balloons will become inflated. So where this question is, yep. So the balloon will be inflated. So they will inflate. All right. So what does the process in B2 represent? And so the process here, because the lungs become inflated or the balloons become inflated, it is representing inhalation. That means air is going into the body, right? So inhalation or inhaling. It's a give two effects of smoking cigarettes on the lungs. So if you smoke cigarette, what effects will have on the lungs? So one, it will cause the mucus to dry up. So it will result in dried mucus. Okay, so the mucus will become dry. Another effect here on the lungs is that it will reduce the surface area. So you have reduced surface area as well. Another possibility here is that, and this is a possibility, I'm not saying that you will get it, but is a possible lung cancer. Okay, you may get lung cancer. We're not saying you must have it now. We're saying that you can get it. All right, so if you smoke, there's a chance for you, a higher chance compared to persons who do not smoke to have lung cancer. So it's just a possibility. Okay, all right. So we have another question, question number 7, and we have one more question after this, and we are done. All right. I'm just trying to go a little bit faster so I don't hold you too long today. All right. So the steps below describe the processes of reproduction in a flowering plant. Identify the process occurring at each step. So here now, it said that option A1. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. So the pollen is going to move from anther to stigma. This is actually pollination. Okay, and you can see my pollination lesson. All right, so part 2 is a male nucleus in pollen grain fusing with female nucleus in ovum. And so once the nuclei are fused, then that is what they call fertilization. This is fertilization here. And this one is saying that now seeds being spread from parent plant in fruits. So the seeds is being spread out, what they call it is seed dispersion. So seed dispersion. All right. And remember again, in paper 2 is all about writing quality rather than quantity. It's not about the amount you write, is what you write. So don't go ahead and just repeating the questions and say, okay, seeds being spread from parent to plant is whatever. No, don't need, go to your answers, okay? They're looking for your answers. You don't need to write a lot. You need to be specific and quality information. Now, part 4, it said swelling of seed and growth of radicle. So once it's taking place, the radicle is growing out, then the puma will grow out as well. This is called germination. Okay, so the growing of a young plant from a seed. Remember, we talked about this in our previous paper. All right, so part B now, so the diagram shows flowering, shows flowers from 2 different plants, A and B. I like the word here that they put here, different plants, and someone use this possible, different plants. So why different plants? Okay, so let's talk about that. But of course, you know that they're the same species because, hey, they look exactly alike, right? But just that 2 different flowers, 2 different plants. All right. It's a name the process occurring between flower A and flower B. So what process taking place between these 2 flowers? It is a pollination is taking place, but specifically it is cross-pollination. Okay. Cross-pollination because 2 different plants of the same species. So it is pollination, but it's cross-pollination, not self-pollination. All right. Let's give one reason for your answer. And the reason here I'm going to put here that the pollen is being transferred from the anther of one plant to the stigma, all right, of to the stigma of the other plant, all right. And so that's why I actually call it cross-pollination, right? And again, remember they must be at the same species, all right? It's not the same flower, different flower, all right? Different plants, cross-pollination. Now, part C is saying that list 2 external conditions needed for seeds to start initial growth. And this initial growth that we're talking about here is germination. The seed is being germinated. So what we're listing here are the conditions for germination. And we also talk about this in our previous review paper, right? And so what must be present here to make germination effective? You must have optimal temperature, okay? So you must have the optimal temperature, okay? Also, you must have available oxygen. And put available oxygen. Leave off my L. Okay, available oxygen. All right. And what also you must have beside oxygen, remember when plants or seeds are being germinated, there's no need for light and there's no need for carbon dioxide. Please remember that. Why oxygen? Because the plant is respiring to produce energy. That is why oxygen is needed instead of carbon dioxide, okay? And again, you must have available water. The water is important. No water, no moisture, no germination at all. Available water. And you also need the correct pH. For some plants, they are very pH specific because of the enzymes present in the seeds. And so if the pH is not correct, then the seed will not germinate properly because the enzymes may become denatured or become inactive, right? And so the correct pH is also important. So those are the 4 basic stuff that needed for germination. All right. Now, structure question D. It said, from the pictures shown below, identify the 2 methods of spreading seed from a parent plant. And I want to just highlight something here based on looking at this diagram. This is a castor oil, right? Here you have a particular opening of the castor oil. That means there's a reason why it is open, right? And here now, I'm going to put this probably in a different color here. And here now you have, let's put this in red maybe. On this thing you have some spike or some hook-like structures, right? All right, so there's some hook-like structures. There must be a reason for that as well. But let's talk about what is happening here, if we may. The method of dispersing the seed might have of 2 things. One, if the pods or the fruit burst open, with this explosion, the seed can spread out by that force, right? So this is a possible explosion right here that taking place. Another possibility that I may want to talk about here is also by animals. Let me just kind of highlight that a little bit. And yeah, let me just highlight that. Put an asterisk there. And this can also be done by animals because those hook-like structures, yeah, will cause the fruit to get stuck on animals, and then the animals will go away and then probably walking beside a tree. The seed will fall off the animal, or the animal scratch its skin or its fur and cause those seed to drop in a different location, right? So it can be also by animals as well. All right, looking at the maple, the maple look like wings, yeah? So because of the wings, then this is definitely by wind. Okay, that's by wind. All right, that is definitely by wind. All right, so those are our questions right there. Let's go to our next question. And our next question here, which is supposed to be the last question, number 8. Yeah, and this one says diagram shows a section through the human skin. And here we have our human skin. We have 3 layers. I'll label these for you. I promise you that. So let's see if they ask us to label, by the way. This is not a clear diagram. I apologize for that. On the original paper, look much better in terms of the details because there's some small structures below behind these. But nevertheless, we should be able to answer a question still. All right, so here it says define homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis. So homeostasis now, it is a process. So it is the process by which the internal conditions of the body is being maintained. Okay, so it's being maintained. All right, and what conditions are we talking about? Any and every conditions, right? It could be as simple as your heartbeat. Okay, your heart, how fast your heartbeat is maintaining that. Your blood pressure, your glucose level, your body temperatures, your water level, which is osmoregulation. So whatever you maintain in your body, it is an example of homeostasis. Okay, it's an homeostatic condition. All right. So part B now say name layer C and state the stated role in temperature regulation. So part C asks us to name that. That's the lowest part of the skin. Okay, so the lowest part of the skin is called the subcutaneous layer. All right, and the subcutaneous layer also have different names. So subcutaneous layer, and the subcutaneous layer also can be called the fat layer as well, or the hypodermis. Okay, is also called the hypodermis as well. All right, so those are the other names for the subcutaneous layer. What is the role of this in regulating temperature? Now, the fat layer actually insulates the body, right? And so what it does is to keep the body warm by acting as an insulator. So it acts as an insulator, all right? And as a result, keeps the body warm. Okay, so it keeps the body warm. So it helps to maintain your body temperature. You keep your body warm because we are warm-blooded organisms. All right, and we maintain our body temperature. All right, so that is our answer for that part. Let's go to part C. And part C said on the diagram, draw a line to two structures other than part C that are involved in temperature regulation and label them X and Y. So let's see what structure will help us in regulating our temperature. And so we're going to label those X and Y. And so I'm seeing one here, which is this structure right here. Let's label this one X. And that is the sweat gland. Also, the hair is also the next one. Let's call that Y. So that's X and Y. We find our X and our Y. Let's see if there's any more there. There is the blood vessels, and the blood vessels is also important. Sometimes we tend to forget these, and these are important in maintaining our temperature as well. And let's call it Z. They did not ask us for Z, but let's put Z there, X, Y, Z. All right, so remember our Y here. Let's go back to it real quick. Remember the Y part. X is the sweat gland, Y is the hair, and Z is the blood vessels. Okay, so see them right there, all three. All right, so let's go down to the question that they asked after that. So it said now name structure X and Y. I'm also going to name Z. All right, and so structure X is, again, if you look, we have it as a sweat gland. That's the first one I labeled. So X is the sweat gland. All right, and Y is the hair. All right, and Z that we labeled there, remember put Z in as well and put it a little bit higher. So Z, and Z was our blood vessels. All right, so I'm going to tell you, matter of fact, why I put the blood vessel there. Okay. All right, so he said, describe how structure X and Y are used to bring about a lower body temperature back to its normal level or value. So looking at here, how it helps in lowering body temperature. That's the important part. How are we going to lower the body temperature? That's what it's actually asking us. How we lower the body temperature. Let me take this off back. It's not looking so nice at all, right? All right, I'll put this in yellow so it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. All right, great. And so here again, let me quickly. All right, so lower body temperature. I don't want to keep it much longer. We're almost at the end anyhow. All right, so how do we lower body temperatures? Okay, great. So that's what I wanted to focus on. How these structures help in lowering our body temperatures. All right, so first one, let's talk about X. So X produces sweat. Okay. All right, so X produces sweat. All right, and so it produces sweat. Let's just quickly do that. Let's get back this on here. All right, that produces sweat that will cool the body. All right, so that's it for that part. And for Y, the purpose for Y, how it works, it will lower or flattens, okay? All right, so lower or lay flat to release warm hair, okay? Or to release warm hair. All right, to release, let me separate that. Okay, great. All right, and so Z that we actually did, let me put that piece in as well. So Z, how Z worked is that, which is the blood vessels. So Z will dilate, all right, and the process of dilation of the blood vessels is called vasodilation. Okay, for vasodilation. Okay, so vasodilation is a process, all right, and the blood vessels will dilate to release heat from the body, okay? So they will dilate to release heat from the body. All right, and this is where we actually end. So what I promised to do is to label the parts of the skin. So let me just go back up there real quick and label the parts that I promised to label. And so here we have what they call the epidermis at the upper or the upper region of the skin, upper layer. So this is the epidermis. And then B will be our dermis. All right, we already label the last part, which is C, which is our, again, hypodermis or our subcutaneous layer or a fat layer. Okay, so we are at the end of it now, folks, and I'm telling you that I'm very happy for you to be here studying and practicing. And so I wish you well on the examinations and even tests if you use this to study for tests as well. So until next time, see you again on another review or another lesson. Okay, take care, be safe now.